Hi everyone, welcome to week 2 of class. Last time I didn't say this and I want to be clear about it. You'll see in each week's folder that there are PowerPoints, and the hope with the PowerPoint is that they will help you in taking notes. So a lot of times there's questions within the PowerPoint or just statements, and again this should direct you as to some good things to take notes on. And this week you're reading the first 2 chapters of the Women in the New Testament book. The first chapter is more like an intro. So even though that sounds like a lot, it's not as much reading as it might sound. And when you read it, you're going to find out that the first chapter describes this whole topic as a minefield. And Bonnie Thurston, basically says that writing about this is like walking into a minefield. And so I think you'll find that a lot of the subject matter is somewhat controversial as far as how people have interpreted different Bible stories. And because the Bible is held so sacred, this can be something that creates a lot of emotion depending on who you are. So I think that's kind of an interesting analogy, and I think your discussion question this week kind of touches on that. In her intro, she talks about some New Testament themes, and there's 4 of them in particular that she touches on. One of them is language, and she says that language is the common denominator. And, that's what kind of helps us understand the material, but if you don't understand the language, you can't read, then that keeps you from information. And that's kind of a premise of this too, is that the Bible itself was written by men, for men, about men, at a time where people were very illiterate, but in particular women could barely read. There were very few educated women. And so the Bible and its information was also kind of held by men and men alone. Also in the New Testament, you see that there's not a lot of mutuality when it comes to power. People don't have equal respect for each other or see each other as equals. And I think that goes back to the historical context at the time. There was a lot of power struggle going on. And of course, that was among mostly men, but women didn't even factor into the consideration of power. Women were seen as objects, they were seen as possessions. They weren't respected the same way that men might have respected other men. Another one is economics, and I like the quote where she says, "He who holds the gold makes the rules." And obviously, in the New Testament times, women were not the ones that had any material possessions, so they didn't have any power. And then finally, in talking about gender roles, of course, there were a lot of different delineations of this. Women were kind of left to do the work at home, and men made all the money. And so the next chapter will go into more of the gender roles because those also varied. You kind of think of Judaism as being something that, the whole religion kind of thinks the same way. But if you think about it in terms of Catholicism, where even though there are some Catholic beliefs, you find different people of varying degrees faithful to those beliefs. And so you can find kind of a continuum of Catholics, very liberal and very conservative, and everyone else in between. And I think that that was true of Judaism as well. Also, she notes, and I think it's great information, that before Abraham and Abraham's people, most of the world was matriarchal, meaning that women had the power, women were in control. And this was in a time where agriculture was the main way that they got food and had any kind of trade, and women were great at farming and working the land. As soon as it became necessary for them to be nomadic people and hunter-gathering was more important, that's when men started to take on the power roles and the society became patriarchal. So in the second chapter, you're going to read about different groups of women. First, Jewish women, and of course within Judaism, there's different types of Jewish women. There's a group that they're calling Hellenistic women, which is basically Jewish women who've adopted Greek lifestyles. So people who aren't real loyal to their faith, but really admire the Greek lifestyle and maybe are more superficial, maybe want possessions a little bit more, and maybe have a little bit more money, wealth. And then finally, there's Roman women, of course, who had a lot more say and power. So you'll read about those different groups of women, and that will give you a foundation as you start reading the New Testament books. Also, I just want to call your attention to the fact that you have a discussion due this week. This is your first discussion. The discussion you should have posted by 11:55 a.m. on Wednesday, and you should comment to someone else's post by 11:55 a.m. on Friday. I just got done putting in grades for the introductions, which were due this week, so I did put in quite a few zeros. You can still introduce yourself. You probably won't get full credit, and that's how it will work this semester if you don't have things done by the due date and by the time listed on the syllabus. I will give you partial credit for anything posted after that time, but if you want full points, make sure you do it on time. When you're doing your discussion post, make sure that you're being specific and thorough, and referencing the book and the reading is a good idea, and try to be very specific. When you're commenting on someone else's post, make sure that you comment on something that they specifically said. Don't just say great post and leave it at that, okay? Even though in the syllabus they're listed as two separate things, with the discussion being 10 points and the comment being 5 points, I always put them in the grade book together as 15 points. But if you don't comment on someone else's post, then you only get 10 of those 15 points. There is a quiz next week. I will talk about that in the next video. Don't take the quiz. I mean, you can work ahead, but if you do want to take the quiz ahead of time, just so you know, there will be 20 questions. It will concern the reading, everything up until that quiz. I hope you have a great week. Good luck as you begin all of your new classes. And reading your intros, I know that you're all very busy people, and I really respect your hard work and dedication to earning a degree. That's a great thing. So good luck, and I'll talk to you next week.